The family group chat exploded with celebration at 9:47 a.m. on Saturday morning. Melissa, OMG you guys. Just made $50 selling Sarah's old books at my garage sale. Face with tears of joy. Aunt Linda, good for you sweetie. Someone needed to clean out that storage unit. Uncle Tom, about time Sarah got rid of that junk. What was she hoarding all those old books for anyway? Melissa, right? Just dusty old ledgers and notebooks. Some weird guy bought the whole box. Easy money. Mom, Sarah's always been a pack rat. Good job taking initiative, Melissa. I stared at my phone screen in my unmarked sedan, parked outside the federal courthouse in downtown Boston. My hands didn't shake. My breathing remained steady. But my mind was calculating the catastrophic scope of what my cousin had just done. Those weren't old books. They weren't dusty ledgers. They weren't junk. They were 18 months of documented financial evidence in a $47 million securities fraud case. Original ledgers from 1998 to 2003, seized from offshore accounts, painstakingly authenticated, and stored under federal evidence protocols while our forensic accounting team prepared for trial. Each ledger contained handwritten entries detailing illegal transactions, money laundering operations, and fraudulent investment schemes that had destroyed the retirement savings of over 2,000 people. Combined evidentiary value $3.5 million. Legal status. Federal evidence under chain of custody protection. Court status. Trial begins in 6 weeks. My cousin had just sold the cornerstone of our entire case for $50 at a garage sale. I typed a single response in the family chat. Understood. Then I called my supervisor. Special Agent Robert Chin answered on the first ring. Sarah? Aren't you supposed to be testifying in the Berkman deposition? I need to report a breach of federal evidence. My voice was calm, clinical. The Caldwell case documents. All 17 ledgers. They've been sold. Silence. Then, say that again. My cousin accessed my storage unit. She sold the original Caldwell ledgers at a garage sale approximately 45 minutes ago. Unknown buyer. Cash transaction. $50. Jesus Christ. Chen's voice shifted immediately into command mode. Where are you? Federal courthouse parking lot. I can be at the field office in 12 minutes. Get here now. I'm activating the evidence recovery team. Sarah, do you understand what this means? Sir. Without those ledgers we lose the Caldwell case. $47 million in stolen retirement funds, and the defendants walk. And your cousin? Federal theft. Evidence tampering. Obstruction of justice. I paused. Possible accomplice charges if we can't prove it was accidental. Family. Sir. My cousin Melissa. She had emergency access to my storage unit. She was explicitly instructed never to touch the northeast corner, where the evidence was stored in locked, sealed containers marked federal property. Another pause. She sold federal evidence marked as federal property? Yes, sir. Get here. Now. I pulled out of the parking lot, leaving my testimony for the Berkman deposition. My phone continued buzzing with family messages. More congratulations for Melissa, more jokes about my hoarding problem, more suggestions that I should live in the present instead of the past. They only knew. I'd been with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division for 9 years, specializing in complex securities fraud and white-collar crime. The Caldwell case was my masterpiece. A sprawling investigation into a Ponzi scheme that had operated for over 15 years, stealing from teachers, firefighters, nurses, and postal workers who'd trusted a charismatic investment advisor named Marcus Caldwell with their life savings. Caldwell had been brilliant. He'd maintained 2 sets of books, digital records that showed legitimate investments and handwritten ledgers that tracked the actual flow of money. When investors wanted statements, they got the digital fiction. When Caldwell needed to remember who he'd actually stolen from, he consulted his handwritten truth. We'd seized those ledgers from a Cayman Islands bank vault after 18 months of international cooperation. They were smoking gun evidence, Caldwell's own handwriting documenting every fraudulent transaction, every stolen dollar, every lie he'd told. Our forensic accountants had spent a year analyzing them, matching entries to bank records, building an unbreakable case. And my cousin had sold them to some weird guy for $50. The FBI field office in Boston was controlled chaos when I arrived. Chin met me at the security checkpoint, his normally composed expression tight with stress. Conference room 7. Evidence recovery team is assembling. USA Morrison is flying in from New York. The prosecutor's coming here? Sarah, this is the biggest case in the district right now. If we lose these ledgers, we lose everything. Morrison is losing his mind. I followed Chin through the building, past colleagues who looked up with sympathy or curiosity. Everyone in financial crimes knew the Caldwell case. Everyone understood what those ledgers meant. Conference room 7 was packed. Evidence recovery specialists, forensic accountants, cybercrimes analysts, and field agents, all assembled to find 17 handwritten ledgers sold at a garage sale in suburban Massachusetts. Chin gestured for me to sit at the head of the table. Walk us through everything. Start with the storage unit. I took a breath. I rent a climate-controlled storage unit in Lexington. It's registered under my name, secured with a keypad lock and surveillance cameras. I keep work materials there that don't require vault-level security but need preservation. Documents in authentication, evidence pending digitization, research materials. Who has access? Myself and 2 emergency contacts, my mother and my cousin Melissa. Both have the keypad code. Both signed access agreements acknowledging they would only enter in genuine emergencies and would never touch marked federal materials. The ledgers were marked? Stored in 3 locked evidence containers, each labeled federal property. Do not touch, FBI evidence. The containers were in the northeast corner of the unit, separate from my personal storage items. One of the evidence recovery specialists, Agent Patricia Gomez, leaned forward. She would have had to physically move these containers, break the locks, and remove the ledgers. This wasn't accidental. Melissa doesn't read labels, I said quietly. She acts first and asks questions never. She's impulsive, entitled, and convinced she knows better than everyone else. Chin pulled up the family group chat on the conference room screen. The messages glowed in damning clarity. She's bragging about it, observed I.E. Morrison, who'd just entered the room. He was a sharp-faced man in his 50s, known for winning impossible cases. Right now he looked like he wanted to put his fist through a wall. She sold federal evidence and announced it to your entire family. She doesn't know what she sold, I said. She thinks they were old books. She's ignorant, not malicious. Ignorance isn't a defense when federal evidence is marked as federal evidence. Morrison sat down heavily. How fast can we find the buyer? I'm already on it, said Agent David Park from his laptop, pulling traffic camera footage from the neighborhood, cross-referencing timestamps with the garage sale. If the buyer used a credit card for anything else in the area, we'll find them. The sale was cash, I said. I know. But people use cards for gas, coffee, groceries. We'll track vehicle patterns and credit card usage in the vicinity. We'll find them. Morrison turned to me. Your cousin. What's her situation? Married, 2 kids, works part-time as a dental hygienist. Lives in Lexington, 3 miles from the storage facility. He's competitive with me, always has been. When we were kids, she had to win every game, have every achievement recognized, be the center of attention. And now she resents that I have a career she doesn't understand. She tells people I'm a glorified accountant. She makes jokes about government work being easy money. She's convinced I waste my time with boring paperwork while she lives a real life. Does she know you're FBI? Yes. She doesn't care. Or doesn't understand what it means. Chen's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression darkened. We've got a problem. Security footage from the storage facility shows Melissa entering yesterday at 4:17 p.m. She was inside for 43 minutes. She removed 6 boxes. 6. I felt cold. The ledgers were in 3 containers. What else was there? I tried to remember. Case files. Authentication documents. Chain of custody records. Expert witness statements. All Caldwell case materials. Morrison made a strangled sound. She took the entire evidence archive? It looks that way. What did she sell? I don't know. She only mentioned books in the chat. Park looked up from his laptop. I've got her garage sale listing. Posted on Facebook Marketplace Thursday evening. Quote, huge garage sale. Furniture, clothes, kitchen items, books and more. Saturday 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Books, Chin repeated. Plural. She advertised your evidence as garage sale inventory. For the next 3 hours the team worked with brutal efficiency. Traffic cameras captured 17 vehicles arriving at Melissa's garage sale between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. License plate recognition identified owners. Background checks revealed employment, addresses, phone numbers. The weird guy, who bought the books, was identified at 1:47 p.m. Leonard Sutherland, age 68, retired accountant, resident of Arlington. He drove a 2015 Honda Civic. He'd purchased gas at a nearby station at 10:23 a.m., paying with a Visa card. Got him, Park announced. Running his background now. No criminal record. Married 2 adult children. Registered Democrat. Clean credit. Volunteers at the Arlington Public Library. Accountant, Morrison said slowly. Retired accountant. He bought financial ledgers. Everyone in the room understood the implication. A retired accountant would recognize valuable documents. He might know exactly what he'd purchased. Chin stood. We move now. Evidence recovery team, you with me? So you're coming too. We need you to identify the ledgers and verify their authenticity. Am I under investigation? I asked quietly. Not yet. But your cousin is. The moment we secure the evidence, I'm bringing her in. 4 FBI vehicles converged on Leonard Sutherland's modest Cape Cod home in Arlington at 2:34 p.m. Chin knocked on the door while the rest of us waited in tactical positions. If Sutherland ran, if he'd already sold the ledgers, if they'd been destroyed. The door opened. Leonard Sutherland stood there in gardening clothes, dirt on his knees, holding a trowel. He looked at Chen's FBI credentials with confusion rather than fear. Can I help you? Mr. Sutherland, I'm Special Agent Chin, FBI Financial Crimes Division. We have reason to believe you purchased federal evidence at a garage sale this morning. May we come in? Sutherland's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. Federal evidence? The books. Sir. The books. Oh my God. Sutherland stepped back, letting us enter. I knew something was wrong. The markings. The labels. I called my son-in-law, he's a lawyer, he said I should call the FBI, but I was waiting until Monday. Relief flooded through me. He hadn't sold them. He hadn't destroyed them. He'd recognized what they were. Where are the books now, Mr. Sutherland? Chin asked. Kitchen table. I haven't touched them since I brought them home. Well, I opened one to check the contents, but then I saw the entries and the dates and I knew. These are evidence, aren't they? Real evidence. We followed him to the kitchen. There, spread across a scratched wooden table, were all 17 ledgers. Original bindings. Original pages. Caldwell's handwriting visible on the open ledger. Neat columns of numbers, dates, names, transactions. I stepped forward, pulling latex gloves from my pocket. My hands were steady as I checked each ledger, verifying serial numbers against my memorized inventory. All 17 present. No pages missing. No damage. They're all here, I confirmed. Intact. Morrison closed his eyes briefly. Mr. Sutherland, you may have just saved a $47 million fraud case. We're going to need a full statement from you. Of course. Anything. Sutherland looked genuinely distressed. The woman at the garage sale, she said they were old accounting books from her cousin's storage unit. She seemed irritated by them. She sold me the whole box for $50. I thought I was getting vintage ledgers for my collection. I used to collect antique accounting materials. But when I opened them and saw the entries, the dates, the detail. He shook his head. This isn't amateur bookkeeping. This is documentation of something serious. Securities fraud, Chin said. These ledgers document 15 years of Ponzi scheme operations. They're the cornerstone evidence in a federal trial beginning in 6 weeks. Sutherland sat down slowly. And that woman sold them at a garage sale. That woman, I said quietly, is my cousin. She had access to my storage unit. She was instructed never to touch federal materials. She ignored those instructions. Is she going to be arrested? Chin and Morrison exchanged glances. Morrison spoke. Mr. Sutherland, what we're about to tell you is confidential. The woman who sold you these ledgers, Melissa Chin Harrison, is being charged with federal evidence theft, obstruction of justice and evidence tampering. Those are felony charges. She could face up to 20 years in federal prison. I felt nothing. No shock, no horror, no satisfaction. Just cold inevitability. The evidence recovery team photographed everything, documenting the ledger's condition and location. Sutherland gave a detailed statement about the purchase, the price, his initial concerns, and his plan to contact authorities. He was cooperative, helpful, and clearly distressed about his accidental role in evidence mishandling. "Am I in trouble?" he asked. "No, sir," Chin assured him. "You acted appropriately. You recognized something was wrong and planned to report it. You preserved the evidence. You didn't damage or attempt to sell it. You're a witness, not a suspect." By 5 p.m., all 17 ledgers were secured in evidence transport containers and en route to the FBI evidence vault. Chain of custody documentation was updated to reflect the breach, recovery, and resecuring. Morrison was already drafting motions to inform the court about the incident while minimizing damage to the case. "We'll argue that the evidence was continuously under federal control, briefly misplaced and immediately recovered," he explained. "The defense will scream contamination, but we have surveillance footage," Sutherland's statement, "and your cousin's own text messages documenting the timeline. We can survive this." "What about Melissa?" I asked. Chen's expression hardened. "Arrest warrant is being drafted. We're moving on her tonight. She has 2 small children." "I know. But Sarah, she stole federal evidence. She broke into locked containers marked as federal property. She sold critical evidence in an ongoing case. This isn't a mistake we can overlook." "I know," I said. "I'm not asking you to. I'm just stating a fact. She has 2 small children who will watch their mother get arrested tonight. Would you prefer we wait?" "No," I said quietly. "Do it now." I didn't go with them. I went home to my apartment in Cambridge, fed my cat, and waited for the calls I knew were coming. The first call came at 7:32 p.m. My mother. "Sarah, the FBI is at Melissa's house. They're arresting her. What did you do?" "I reported a federal crime, Mom. Melissa stole evidence from my storage unit and sold it at a garage sale. She sold some old books. You're having her arrested over books." "Those books were evidence in a $47 million fraud case. They're worth $3.5 million. They were marked as federal property. She broke into locked containers and sold them. She was trying to help. Your storage unit was a mess. She was explicitly told never to touch the northeast corner. Those instructions were in writing. She signed an access agreement. So what? She made a mistake. She committed a federal crime, Mom. Multiple federal crimes." My mother's voice cracked. "She's your cousin, Sarah. Your family. And you're letting the FBI arrest her in front of her children." "I didn't let anything happen. Melissa chose to commit a crime. These are the consequences of that choice. You could stop this." "No, Mom. I couldn't. Even if I wanted to." She hung up on me. Aunt Linda called next. Uncle Tom after that. Then Melissa's husband Brandon begging me to fix this, to tell them it was a misunderstanding, to remember we're family. I told each of them the same thing. Melissa committed federal crimes. The evidence was clearly marked. She had explicit instructions. There were consequences. None of them wanted to hear it. The family group chat devolved into chaos. Messages poured in, a mixture of fury, disbelief, and desperate pleas. "Uncle Tom, Sarah, how could you do this to your own cousin?" "Aunt Linda, she has children, Sarah." "Children?" "Mom, you're choosing your job over your family. I hope you can live with yourself." "Cousin David, this is insane. They're just old books. You're ruining Melissa's life over books." I muted the chat and turned off my phone. The next morning, I attended the emergency status conference for the Caldwell case. Judge Patricia Rodriguez presided, her expression severe as Morrison explained the evidence breach and recovery. "Let me understand," Judge Rodriguez said slowly. "Federal evidence in your custody was stolen and sold at a garage sale?" "Yes, Your Honor. However, the evidence was recovered intact within 6 hours. Chain of custody has been documented. The breach was immediately reported and investigated. And the person who stole the evidence? Arrested and charged. Federal evidence theft, obstruction of justice, evidence tampering. Related to the prosecution team? Morrison hesitated. The evidence was stored by FBI financial analyst Sarah Chin, one of our case investigators. The defendant is her cousin. Judge Rodriguez looked at me. I stood. Miss Chin, you reported your own cousin for stealing your evidence? Yes, Your Honor. The moment I learned what she'd done, I contacted my supervisor. The evidence recovery team was mobilized immediately. And you're still on the case? Yes, Your Honor. Unless the court directs otherwise. Judge Rodriguez was silent for a long moment. Then, the court appreciates the prosecution's immediate response to this incident. Chain of custody concerns are noted but do not appear to compromise the evidence's integrity. Defense will have opportunity to examine the breach during trial. He turned to me. Miss Chin, your commitment to evidence preservation is noted. You did the right thing even when it cost you personally. Thank you, Your Honor. The defense attorneys weren't pleased, but they couldn't argue with the facts. The ledgers had been stolen, yes, but they'd been recovered intact with complete documentation of every step. Our case was damaged but not destroyed. Melissa's arraignment was scheduled for the following Monday. I didn't attend. Instead, I read the transcript later. Melissa Chin Harrison, charged with theft of federal evidence, value over $1 million, obstruction of justice and evidence tampering. Bail set at $100,000. She couldn't make it. She was remanded to federal custody pending trial. My phone exploded with messages again. Family members demanding I post bail, demanding I drop charges, demanding I fix this. I responded to none of them. 3 days later, Jessica, my younger sister, the one family member who'd stayed neutral, called me. Sarah. Hey Jess. I need you to understand something. Mom's not speaking to you. Dad's not speaking to you. Aunt Linda is telling everyone you're a monster. Half the family has blocked your number. I know. Melissa's kids are staying with Linda. Brandon's trying to hold things together, but he's a mess. The mortgage is due. Melissa lost her job, obviously. Everything's falling apart. I know, I said again. And you're okay with this? I was quiet for a moment. Jess, do you know what the Caldwell case is? Some kind of fraud thing? Marcus Caldwell stole $47 million from over 2,000 people. Teachers, firefighters, nurses, postal workers, people who saved their entire lives for retirement. He stole everything. Some of his victims lost their homes. Some couldn't afford medical care. 3 people committed suicide when they realized their life savings were gone. Silence. The ledgers Melissa sold? I continued. Those are the only physical evidence of what Caldwell did. Without them, he walks free. He keeps the money. His victims get nothing. He serves no time. But Melissa didn't know. Melissa broke into locked containers marked federal property. Do not touch, FBI evidence. She sold them for $50 without asking a single question. She was more interested in making a quick sale than in following basic instructions. She made a mistake. She committed a federal crime that could have destroyed justice for 2,000 victims. She made a mistake. A massive, criminal, devastating mistake. Jessica was quiet for a long time. Then, Mom says you value your job more than family. I value justice more than protecting criminals, I said. Even when the criminal is family. That's really how you see this. That's how the law sees it. That's how 2,000 defrauded victims would see it. That's how any rational person should see it. Another pause. I don't know if I can defend you anymore, Sarah. I'm not asking you to. She hung up. The trial began 6 weeks later, exactly as scheduled. Morrison presented the ledgers as evidence. 17 handwritten volumes documenting Marcus Caldwell's 15-year fraud operation. Forensic accountants testified about matching ledger entries to bank records. Victims testified about their losses, their devastation, their ruined retirements. Caldwell's defense team tried to argue evidence contamination, pointing to the garage sale incident. Morrison demolished the argument with Sutherland's testimony, surveillance footage, and complete chain of custody documentation. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Guilty on all counts. Caldwell was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $47 million in restitution. The victims, most of them elderly, many of them struggling, would finally get some portion of their stolen savings back. I sat in the courtroom gallery and watched as several victims hugged Morrison, thanking him through tears. An elderly woman named Dorothy Martinez approached me afterward. "You're the FBI analyst," she said. "The one who protected the evidence." "Yes, ma'am. I heard what happened. I heard you had to arrest your own cousin to keep those books safe." I nodded. Dorothy took my hand in both of hers. Her skin was paper-thin, her grip surprisingly strong. "My husband and I lost everything. He died before we could get any money back. He died thinking we'd be homeless, thinking he'd failed me." Tears streamed down her face. "You gave us justice. You protected those books when it cost you everything. Thank you." I couldn't speak. I just squeezed her hand. Melissa's trial was 3 months after Caldwell's conviction. Her public defender negotiated a plea, guilty to evidence theft and obstruction. Sentencing guidelines recommended 5 to 7 years, but the judge showed some mercy. Melissa had no prior record, had 2 young children, and had cooperated after arrest. 3 years in federal prison. 2 years supervised release. $250,000 in restitution to the government for investigation and recovery costs. Permanent ban from federal employment. I didn't attend the sentencing. I read the transcript later, noting that Melissa had sobbed through her allocution, insisting she hadn't understood what she was doing, hadn't meant to cause harm, hadn't realized the books were important. Judge Rodriguez had been unmoved. "Ms. Harrison, the evidence was clearly labeled. You were explicitly instructed not to touch it. You broke into locked containers. You sold federal property for personal profit. Your ignorance is willful, not innocent. This court will not excuse federal crimes because you couldn't be bothered to read warning labels." My family splintered after that. My mother stopped speaking to me entirely. My father sent one email. "I hope your career was worth losing your family." Aunt Linda wrote me out of her will and made sure everyone knew about it. Jessica was the only one who eventually came around. She showed up at my apartment 8 months after Melissa's sentencing, looking exhausted. "Can I come in?" I let her inside. We sat in uncomfortable silence for a few minutes. "I've been reading about the Caldwell case," Jessica said finally. "All of it. The victims, the investigation, the trial. I read victim impact statements. Sarah, those people." "I know. Melissa could have destroyed everything." "Yes. And you saved it. You protected evidence that gave 2,000 people justice." "I did my job." "No." Jessica looked at me directly. "You sacrificed your entire family to do the right thing. That's not just a job. That's..." She trailed off. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't understand. I'm sorry I chose Melissa over you. I'm sorry for all of it." I felt something crack in my chest, something that had been frozen for months. "Thank you. Mom's never going to forgive you. Neither is Linda. They've convinced themselves you're the villain." "I know. But I needed you to know that I understand now. What you did was right. It was awful and hard and it cost you everything, but it was right." We talked for 3 hours that night. Really talked for the first time in years. When Jessica left, she hugged me tightly. "You're a better person than I am, Sarah. I don't know if I could have done what you did." "I hope you never have to find out," I said. 2 years after Melissa's conviction, I attended a victim compensation hearing for the Caldwell case. The recovered assets had been liquidated, and restitution was being distributed to victims. People who'd lost everything were finally getting some portion of their savings back. Not all of it, never all of it, but enough to survive, to pay medical bills, to avoid homelessness. Dorothy Martinez was there. She was frailier now, using a walker, but her eyes lit up when she saw me. "Agent Chin." "Just Sarah," I said. "I'm not an agent." "You are to me." She smiled. "I got my check last week. $127,000. It's not everything we lost, but it's enough. It's enough to keep my home, to pay for my medications, to live with dignity." Her eyes filled with tears. "Because of you. Because you protected those books. I just did my job." "You did more than your job. You sacrificed your family for us. For 2,000 strangers you'd never met." He squeezed my hand. "That matters, Sarah. It matters more than you know." I stayed at the hearing for hours, watching as victims received their compensation checks, listening to their stories of relief and gratitude. These were the people Melissa had almost robbed of justice. These were the lives that hung in the balance when she sold those ledgers for $50. And I knew, despite everything it had cost me, despite the family I'd lost, despite the loneliness and the judgment and the isolation, I'd made the right choice. Some bridges burn. Some families break. Some prices are too high to measure. But 2,000 people got justice. Dorothy Martinez kept her home. Marcus Caldwell went to prison for 35 years. It was enough. It had to be enough. 3 years after Melissa's conviction, I received a letter. Prison mail, carefully screened, bearing Melissa's handwriting. Sarah, I'm writing this because my therapist says I need to take accountability. I'm not good at that. You know I'm not. I was jealous of you. Always. You were smarter, more accomplished, more respected. I told myself you were boring, that your job was meaningless, that your life was empty. It made me feel better about my own failures. When I saw those books in your storage unit, I didn't see evidence. I didn't see someone's hard work. I saw an opportunity to prove you were just a hoarder, just a pack rat, just someone who needed me to fix their mess. I was wrong. About everything. I've spent 3 years in here thinking about the people I hurt. Not just you, though I hurt you terribly, but those victims. The people whose justice I almost destroyed because I was too selfish and stupid to read a label. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know I understand now what I did. I understand what you sacrificed to protect those books. I understand that you're a better person than I'll ever be. I'm sorry, Sarah. For everything. Melissa. I read the letter 3 times. Then I filed it away in my desk drawer, next to Dorothy Martinez's thank you card and the trial transcript where Judge Rodriguez called me a model of professional integrity and personal courage. I never responded to Melissa's letter. Some apologies arrived too late. Some damage can't be repaired. But I kept the letter. Because somewhere in its awkward, painful sentences was the acknowledgement I'd never gotten from anyone else in my family. I'd done the right thing. And in the end, that recognition from the person who'd suffered the consequences meant more than any family approval ever could. Marcus Caldwell is in federal prison. 2,000 victims received compensation. Dorothy Martinez kept her home. Melissa is serving her sentence. My family is fractured beyond repair. I spend holidays alone. But 17 ledgers sit in federal evidence archives, preserved for history, testament to justice served and sacrifices made. It was worth it. It will always be worth it.